Homesteads and Homeschools is part of the Liberty Hippie Podcast Network. If you like what we do, be sure to check out This Week in Liberpods, Peace Freaks, Cannabis Heals Me, and Free Market's Green Earth. We're living proof that libertarian doesn't mean washed up Republican.
Hey, what's up, y'all? I'm back. You're back. Welcome back to Homesteads and Homeschools. I'm your host, Liberty Hippie, here with you for yet another week. This is episode number 76, which means you can find the show notes at homesteadsandhomeschools.com/076. I hope you all had a fantastic 4th of July weekend out there celebrating your freedom, lighting off those state-sanctioned, super taxed fireworks behind your dainty little mask, making sure you're not coughing on anybody. You know it's coming. We're all going to have to be wearing masks soon enough, and just going to be what it is, I suppose. I don't know. I'm over it. I'm over it if you can't tell. The whole COVID thing, paying attention to numbers, reading things, and actually paying attention to what's going on and what is being pushed is, it's a scary, scary world, but I digress. Oh, let's get into it. My guest, Bellamy, Fitzpatrick. If you listen to the other show I do, Free Market's Green Earth, with my buddy Nicky P, you heard us talk to him a while back, and he does some permaculture stuff, and so I thought, why not have him on? He's a fun dude, good conversations, and I think this conversation was a good one as well. You guys should definitely check him out. I'll put all his links in the show notes. He's got lots of good material out there, really interesting stuff, thoughtful stuff. And the link to Free Market's Green Earth will be in there as well. I think it's freemarketsgreenearth.com/046 off the top of my head, but if I'm wrong, it's in the show notes. So anyway, guys, enough of that. Let's just get down to it. Let's go plant those Liberty Seeds with my guest, Mr. Bellamy Fitzpatrick.
Every single day, every single day. Every single day, every single day. Everybody sour like a lemon tree. I'm just smiling down upon my enemies. Do the shit and love it on a daily. Say you hate your job, but you'll never leave. But that ain't gonna be me.
All right, so my guest today is Mr. Bellamy Fitzpatrick. Yeah, you may have heard his name bounced around on a few other podcasts and a few other things, but he's on today to talk about permaculture. So, Bellamy, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time here. So I know in other podcasts you've given a bit of a rundown on how you got to where you are. I'm curious how you got to where you are gardening wise. Was this have you always been a gardener of sorts?
No, not at all. And I guess I should put a caveat on the entire conversation by saying I don't consider myself any kind of permaculture master, or I don't presume to be in a position to teach, really, although technically I do have a permaculture design certification, which, according to the strange permaculture system that has developed, that does qualify you to teach. And there's a whole kind of political history to that, and agreement and disagreement as to whether that's a good thing. But I consider myself very much a learner, and so I just want to frame the whole conversation that way. And I did do a little bit of gardening as a kid growing up, but it was just flowers, like a butterfly insectary type of garden, not for subsistence, not broad scale, very small scale. And the reason I got interested in permaculture and gardening, homesteading, was political. So it was when I was about 20 or 21. At that point, I had already gotten very into anarchism and considered myself an anarchist, even though, from the vantage point I have now, 12 years later, I was still pretty ignorant about a lot of things. But around that same time, I learned about permaculture, and it just hit me immediately that this made so much sense synergistically with anarchism, because the answer that every anarchist like me who wants things to be extremely decentralized, the question that someone like me has to answer is, okay, well, how could this actually work practically, infrastructurally? And I think permaculture does give us a way to have highly decentralized communities. It does give us a way to meet a lot of our needs on a home scale, and very potentially all of our needs on something like a village scale, or something like that.
Yeah, it probably does. Before we get too far, what is permaculture? I think most people have an idea, but like, how would you define it? What would you call it?
Yeah. I think, like anarchism, it's one of those terms that you'll get a lot of different definitions. I like the definition that focuses on it being a design system. So I would say it's an ecological design schema that is based on whole systems thinking, like general systems theory, applying systems theory to ecology. It draws on both traditional knowledge and modern scientific data. And it's also a design system that's guided by a set of ethics. And I would say that the ethical part could use more development, but I would say it's based on a kind of ecological and humanistic ethics. And that design system gives us a way to frame our thinking around food systems, fuel systems, shelter, both shelter design and sourcing of materials, medicine systems, I would say, through herbalism and recovery of traditional medicine, and basically meeting human needs in a way that mimics and meshes with our local and global ecology rather than working against those systems, which is what a lot of what we do now.
Yeah, it's wild when you first start kind of really thinking about the whole permaculture setup and really how interwoven everything is. And it's one thing to put a garden in, or even set your gardens and that sort of stuff up in a system that flows. But you're right. Once you start thinking about like even your house design, where it goes on the land, how it sits on the land, everything just pours into it, and it's very holistic in that sense. And I know it's nice to see it kind of breaks up some of that disjointedness we have in all other aspects of the world. But
yeah. I mean,
how did you?
I was just going to jump on one thing that you said. You said where your house sits on the land. That's something that I never thought about before I started engaging with permaculture. Now you see all the time how badly houses are situated. They're situated to face the road rather than in accordance with solar aspect. We place houses on high value arable land rather than putting it. You should be placing your house on the land that is the least suitable for growing food, and we often put it in like a prime spot on the land that we have. So.
Yep, that's we that's the way our house is.
Yeah.
It fits. It's nice and square to the road, and it looks really nice on the road. But in terms of solar efficiency, it's garbage. I mean, in the winter, I'm in the shadow, and in the summer, like I get all these, and I'm in the middle of Georgia. It's hot. Like who does and that was something like my father built a house that I grew up in, and he was kind of a big nerd about all that stuff, all the insulation and all the everything. And when he designed it, he set it up so that in the summer you'd have the right shadows. And it didn't dawn on me until I was an adult and I was looking around that like that wasn't normal necessarily. That people didn't think about that sort of thing. People are more concerned about I don't know how it looked from the road, I guess. But when you how did you come into permaculture? How did you kind of find that? What was that, probably 10, 15 years ago?
It was,
give or take.
It was about 12 years ago.
Okay.
But for the first 2 years after I learned about it, I was just reading things here and there, and it was just kind of a curiosity for me. And then finally I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I have to really start getting hands-on experience, because I don't, I know a little bit of theory now, but it's very ungrounded. And so I started doing the WOOF program. If you're familiar with it, it's what is it?
Yeah.
Actually, don't even remember what the acronym means.
Yeah.
It's like Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. It's like, I don't know, Peace Corps for like farming or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a very weird system because it's very informal. And so basically people just list themselves on this in this book that comes out every year, as well as a website, and just say, hey, I have this farm, or I have this homestead, or I have this whatever, and here's kind of a description of what it's like, and if you're interested, reach out. And so it's one of those strange things that you can do through the internet now. And I had very good experiences and bad experiences, but I learned a lot very quickly. And then I went from that to, for a little while after that, I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I had like an urban garden, because we took all the concrete out of the like backyard, such as it was, of the place where we lived, which was pretty funny, actually. We took it all out with sledgehammers and wrecking bars, and used the pieces of concrete to make walls for raised beds. And then eventually, it's a long story, but it led to us being where we are now. When I say us, I mean my fiance and I.
Nice. Did you were you renting when you pulled up the concrete?
Yeah.
Did you get in trouble for that?
No, actually,
nice.
Because the place we lived was like a total slumlord situation, and he was breaking so many rules. Like, the place we were living was not even legally inhabitable because of the problems with the house. And I think he saw it as like, well, I guess they're kind of increasing, the value of the house overall, because he could tell that we knew what we were doing. We weren't just like idiots going at it.
I'm curious about the wolf situation there. So you said you had some good, some bad experiences. Was it set up to be educational, or was it more like free labor kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, you mean the program as a whole?
Like the people that you would go to, like, so when you would go work on somebody's farm, did you find that people were more like, were people interested in teaching you and kind of giving you hands-on experience, or was it more like, all right, guy, I need you to go weed that garden over there kind of thing? How did that play out?
I would say most people that we met were more like, eco-farming, evangelical kind of people that really did want you to learn and did hope that you would go on to do something else. But I have definitely heard of people having experiences where it's more like labor extraction. And I mean, it's not free in the sense that they are giving you room and board, but the worst experience I had was people who, they seemed barely concerned with me getting food and didn't want to engage with me at all. And I think I don't know quite what happened. I think somehow I made a very bad impression on them, but they wouldn't explain quite why. And I left after about a week, basically saying, like, this is clearly not working for me, and it doesn't seem to be working for you. So
you had a little bit of leeway to kind of like, it wasn't a contract necessarily.
Well, I mean, they can't keep you there, I was basically like, I'm leaving.
Yeah, fair enough. I wasn't sure there's some like, kind of, I don't know, contract type agreement thing or whatever, how that worked, or what they, who is it organized by some overarching entity, or is it just kind of like a?
Not really. I mean, someone, there's some, I think, corporation that puts out the information, but it's almost like a Craigslist type of thing. Like, all they're doing is providing the communication infrastructure, and then everything else is just happening as it happens. So yeah, I guess we're talking about it for a bit. I guess I would, if somebody is interested, I would say, yeah, it can be worthwhile, but you have to be very careful about who you go to stay with, and I would say have some sort of exit strategy.
Yeah, I can't blame that. So, you did a little bit of that. Do you remember when you kind of decided that this was sort of the lifestyle or the I don't want to say end goal, but one of the big goals of your future?
Yeah, it did come from a theory sort of standpoint in that I kept reading and thinking and talking with people about the state of the world and just how many problems there are and how bleak things seem at times. And I tried a lot of different things. Like I tried the more kind of activist thing. I was in the Bay Area, so there were lots of things going on everywhere. And before that, I was doing sort of like campus activism stuff. And I just kept trying different things, including, in the Bay Area, there were periodically riots and that kind of stuff. And just thinking about, okay, well, like what could work, what could conceivably work, and where is the direction of history going? Is the United States going to fall apart under its own contradictions? Is the United States going to stop being the global hegemon? And is China going to become ascendant? Is humanity just going to go over the cliff with hubristic technology and we're going to have some big collapse? And I kept coming back to, no matter which way things looked like they were going, that doing homesteading with the goal of networking and having community scale resilience and autarky kept seeming like such an important part of whatever was going to happen. And so eventually I thought, okay, well, this is something that makes sense, and it's something that I think I could do. I think I had the aptitude for it, as well as doing stuff like media. So I just thought, okay, well, let's do it. And at that point, I was in a relationship with someone who also wanted to do it, and I had other social connections with people who were interested in this kind of thing. It just seemed like we could all move in that direction. And now, basically I'm like, okay, well, I've dug in my heels and this is just what I'm going to do because I've put a lot of work into it.
Yeah. When did you get your certificate, or what would you say is a certificate? It's a certificate, right?
Yeah. Very recently, actually, just last summer, I actually did it. And I did my course at Ben Falk's place. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He has a place up in Vermont, and he, along with several other teachers, were had an event there with about, 30 students probably.
So what is that? I guess there's two things there. I mean, what did you learn? But what does this certificate get you? Like, what does that do for you?
Yeah. So I mentioned that there was this conflict in the early days of permaculture of, okay, how do we spread the ideas? And two of the major people at the beginning of permaculture were Bill Mollison and David Holmgren. And they eventually had a major falling out. But at that time, they were still working together. And there was this sort of conflict. On the one hand, Mollison wanted to sort of just get the ideas out there as quickly as possible. So the idea being that you could get sort of initiated through this design course. And then once you had done that, then you had all the privileges and honors to go teach other people and give them certificates as well. And Holmgren said, no, that's going to lead to a kind of degradation in teaching, because just because someone goes through the course doesn't mean that they're in any way equipped to, either in terms of knowledge or in terms of ability to communicate that knowledge. And he wanted it to be more like a centralized academic model, like there would be specific institutions that you would go to get this training. And I don't know exactly how it went, but basically Mollison won. So I would say this might sound rather heretical coming from an anarchist, but I think probably Holmgren was right about this, because there are people out there who give these courses and you just, like, I've never been in one of these courses, but I've heard of courses that are just not good. And that can be either because the people doing it don't have as much knowledge as they think they do, or just because they're not good teachers. They're not good communicators of knowledge. So basically the certificate means that you've gone through one of these and technically you're qualified to teach one now.
Interesting. It's it's one of those things where, just, giving anybody the stamp of approval, if you will, can dilute things, but at the same time,
Yes.
you kind of gotta pick and choose, and I mean, I'm sure you can see some of the pictures online of somebody's permaculture setup and know that well, maybe they're not quite
That's true.
not quite the one that I want to go visit, but
yeah, it's more like caveat emptor, right?
So you how long have you guys been where you are now?
Just over 4 years. Yeah, so not that long.
You say that, not that long. And I've been here for 5 years, and I feel like it's been a while, man.
Yeah, sure.
So what do you guys got going on now? How have you started with your permaculture setup? Was your house pre-existing?
Yeah, and it actually is a perfect case of what we were talking about earlier. It has almost perfectly the wrong solar aspect. And we decided to just keep it rather than knock it down because, frankly, my building skills are pretty limited. I mean, I can do a little bit, I'm learning, but it would have been huge to try to start from scratch. And we wanted to do the kind of forest gardening approach. So what we've focused on mostly is perennials. We do grow annuals. We have grown more annuals some years, fewer annuals other years. But we put a lot of our effort into the perennials, by which I mean trees, shrubs, bushes, perennial vegetables, because we're more interested in having long-term resilience and self-sufficiency than short-term. And because of other things, like I'm in school right now, so I don't have as much time as I would like. And so I don't know how many now, like maybe 600 or so trees and shrubs in the ground. And that's things like a lot. I don't want to be misleading because one of the things we tried to do is make a deer-proof hedge. So we have light fencing right now, but we plan eventually to take the fencing down and hopefully have a hedge that would stop deer from coming in, while at the same time actually giving deer material to browse on the outside. So that's like hawthorn, Osage orange, alder, seaberry, other things that form kind of like a dense brambly shield. And we also planted trees for timber, like black locust, which is one of the highest quality woods that you can harvest around here, at least. And I don't know, should I just start naming shit? I don't know how you want me to do this.
No, I'm curious. So what, with your house, the way that it is there anything that you can do to sort of rectify some of the negative aspects of your home setup? Or are you just kind of going off of it and making do with what is there? Yeah,
we actually did something rather drastic, which was remove part of the second floor. So that way, a good deal of the house gets a lot more light than it used to, because we now have this kind of, I don't know what it's called, like almost like a loft design to the house. So the second floor is partial. That was a drastic choice, like I said, and my father, who's a general contractor, considered it, downright heretical, because it's like, why would you remove square footage in your house? This is crazy.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah. And I mean, in some ways it was kind of crazy, but it improved the solar aspect significantly. We put more insulation in the house than there used to be. We replaced the windows and put in double pane windows instead of having single pane. So yeah, I mean, I'd say it's much better than it used to be. It used to be that you could, when there was strong wind, you could, feel the drafts entering the house. And now it's not like that. So.
No, I know it's it's amazing. I don't know. I don't know if it was the way like I was brought up, or it just is the things that I've done in my adult life, but like your insulation, like your building envelope, it's just, people are so concerned about like what's inside, but like if you don't have a good envelope, you're going to be fighting so hard just to keep your temperature at the level you want it, and it just gets so expensive. It's insane. We were in Vermont, and the house was from 1856, I think, and it had some old windows in there, and in part of the house we'd put it's like that aluminum wrapped styrofoam type insulation stuff. We put that in the windows to block it up in the winter because it was just so cold. And there would be times when the wind would come and just blow those out through the windows. It was like insane. We ended up, fixing all the windows up, putting new ones in, but that alone is just worth a bunch.
Yeah. There. I mean, our house is also a mid 19th century house, so it may be similar. And I agree with you. A house, before anything else, a house is basically a membrane, right? That's the most important feature.
It is, and it's we kind of fell into that, I think, because we were more looking at the land when we bought the house, and the house was kind of second, and now we're like, oh man, we didn't need all this house, we don't want all this house, and now we're paying for it later. But so you guys you're doing mostly perennials.
Yeah, and I mean, like this year we're growing like potatoes and sweet potatoes and stuff. Like we grow annuals. I'm not trying to act like we're.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I'm sure you get some of them going. I know how it goes getting busy though. It's when some of those perennials, like they do take less work. It seems like, you don't have to put all that time into seeding and everything every year. But, so what do you got, like perennial vegetables, and you got your typical run of the mill stuff, or do you got some?
Yeah, we have like Turkish Rocket and Good King Henry and
how does that do for you?
Good King Henry?
Yeah.
It's small right now. It's in the nursery. So we're going to plant it out as it gets going. Turkish Rocket, I think, is great. It's very productive and easy. We have Salad Burnett. We have, actually one of the big things is sunchokes. I don't know if you've grown them. Also known as Jerusalem artichokes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. How long have you had those?
For 3 years. 3 years.
Okay. And how have they done for you?
Oh, they're awesome. I think they're one of the, at least for us where we are, one of the best things that we have, in the sense that they require almost no care and they produce a lot. And we actually ferment them, because some people will say this is kind of silly, but you know what I'm getting at. Yeah. Okay. So for people who don't know what I'm getting at, they have a bad reputation for giving you gas. And I think if you don't ferment them, that is definitely true. But fermenting them makes them taste fantastic and totally gets rid of that problem.
Yeah. That's the thing with beans too, man. I sprout all my beans, and nobody has that problem. I'm like trying to tell people, but we grew Jerusalem artichokes once. We tried, and everybody tells you that they're like super invasive if you don't keep them down. My dog killed them in a season. She just ate the tops down. I don't know. She eats like all that sunflower echinacea that okay. And she just mowed them down. It was my only experience with Jerusalem artichokes that everybody says you can't get rid of. My dog.
Yeah, they do spread. But we've found if you just harvest them pretty aggressively. So just so everyone's clear, they're tubers. That's the main yield. And they're tubers that grow rhizomatically. So they just spread, and they spread through these roots that periodically form tubers, and you harvest the tubers. And we found as long as you harvest them pretty aggressively, it keeps them, hemmed in. And then all we do is put a little bit of manure on them in the fall, which I don't even know if it's really necessary. And then they just come right back up the next year.
Good deal. What are you guys hoping to do in the future? What do you got, any big plans coming up? Are you just kind of adding slowly, or?
Yeah, the big thing we wanted to do, it's hard to describe if you don't have the layout of our place, but basically from where I'm standing, over here is where we have about 3 acres that we manage as the forest garden. It's not super intensive when I say 3 acres. It's like medium intensive. But over here we have a hill that slopes up, and we have the good fortune of having a lot of wild blueberries on that hill. But there's space below the blueberry area where we want to put in several swales and mounds to catch water and make hugel culture type mounds where you bury a lot of dead wood to increase fertility and organic matter and water retention, and put a lot more chestnuts on them. So we started experimenting with a small number of chestnuts. And our area seems to be pretty good for them because we have sandy, well-drained soil, but also a lot of rain, which is basically what they like. And we want to put a lot more. And we're actually going to use tubes for the first time, which I've never done with trees because I don't know, I like to be less intensive in the management, basically. But
when you say tubes, what do you mean?
Like these plantra tree tubes, so to protect them from deer browse.
Like to go in it. Okay. Yeah. No, I wasn't sure if you meant like that. I was thinking tubes like maple syrup, like siphon tubes going around. Like I wasn't. Yeah. Okay. Good deal.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah. But because this will be an unprotected area out here, and so we're gonna try using it for the first time. My fiance had the idea, and that way we don't have to put any kind of fencing or anything. And once they get tall enough that they're out of the tube, they're basically beyond deer browse height. So we're going to put in a lot of chestnuts as well as other things like elderberry and currants. And that's something that we'll probably do either this month or next month. And we're going to try renting a small excavator for the first time, which I've no experience with. So to make the land.
Let me know how that goes.
Have you?
I'm always thinking about it. We are I'm on the fault line in Georgia. So it's either sand or it's clay, and you can't dig in the clay at all. It's, you go 6 inches, it's concrete. And we're thinking about maybe turning our front yard into basically big hugel culture, mounds, and just do something with that. Cause right now it's just, even the grass has trouble growing. I have a fig tree out there that's 4 years old, 5 years old. I think we put it in when we got the house, and it's grown maybe 6 inches. It hasn't done anything. So we really got to try to mess with that. But
we have basically the extreme sand level. It's the particle size is so high that technically it's gravel, but it wouldn't look like gravel colloquially. Obviously, it just looks like in some places almost like beach.
Yeah, it's wild. How does that with erosion and stuff?
It's okay, but the way that we structured, so we get a lot of water, a lot of rain, although not this spring actually, and the way that we structured the managed area I'm talking about is like a pit and mound. So we have you have a swale and then a hugel mound and then a swale and then a hugel mound, not right on top of each other, but pretty close together. And so when it rains, sometimes we get very heavy rain, and we catch a lot of the water and slow it down. So that helps with both water retention and erosion. But the hugels also help because in some places the organic matter is very low. And we suspect that's because there was overgrazing on that area.
That's something we've kind of run into too. This used to be all cotton, soy, and tobacco, and then for a number of years before we bought it, it was cows and goats, and it's just beet. And we made a couple hugel culture mounds in the back, and I made them too peaked, and I didn't think I made they weren't that peaked, but it was peaked enough that when it rained, the sand just washed off. I had to like flatten it out. It's like, it's almost like its own raised bed right now, cause it's flat on the top. It's big and flat, and it's like it's a weird looking shape in the middle of the garden. But
yeah, what you described is actually a friend of mine who is a much more experienced permaculturist, actually a professional designer. And he talks about the pattern of bad land management. It starts with the monocropping that you were talking about. Then once you've degraded it, then you bring in the cows. Once you overgraze the cows, you bring in the goats to finish it off. And then you just extracted all the organic matter.
Then you walk away and let some other sucker to deal with it.
Erode.
We're trying. Curious, what percentage of your property do you guys kind of manage, do you think?
Not much. Probably about 3 or 4%.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Good deal. All right, man. It sounds interesting. It's permaculture. It's always been one of those things. Like, I would love to get into it. I don't know how to start. It just seems like such a big undertaking when you have pre-existing fences and garages and barns and buildings that are already here, and then to try to build around it, and
yeah. I mean, I think it, as someone who, like I said, is very much learning, you have to find that right balance of trying to educate yourself and be careful that you don't make terrible mistakes by trying to do too much too quickly.
Yeah.
But you also have to let yourself experiment and just say, hey, I'm going to try this on this small area and see what happens. And then you get feedback very quickly, through just observation. And that's what you start to appreciate. Like,
yeah,
you appreciate how, when I go out there, I'm actually just, it's very significant, but small part of everything that's happening, all these energy flows, all these organisms moving through, making changes, and you are participating and getting communication from all of these different forces once you pay attention to the feedback. And sometimes that happens through, like what you were saying, you try something and then you get this erosion. You're like, okay, I put something out there and I got feedback.
Yeah. It's a wonderful learning experience. It's really, like, anything you do, gardening, animals, any of that, it's constantly learning and knowing how to pay attention, figuring out how to pay attention and listen is, I don't know, a wonderful thing. But I know you have some other places out there where people can find you. Are any of them like, do you document your story at all? Do you guys talk about your gardens at all, your permaculture at all?
No. And that's partially a product of sort of separated magisteria. So, I say a lot of things as an anarchist, and in the past I've made several, across my media history, I've made a number of inflammatory statements that we don't want associated with what we're doing here per se, because we actually have like a not-for-profit corporation and so forth. So
all right.
Yeah, so that's a case of separated magisteria, but you can find, I have a blog that I've not been updating, but I'm going to start updating it more at bellamyfitzpatrick.com. You can find me on Twitter. My handle is @anarchbellamy. And I do a video cast that has been on hiatus, but is restarting this week, called Liberty and Logos, and that's at libertyandlogos.com. But if you go to any one of those, you'll find all the others.
All right. Well, I'll put all that stuff in the show notes. There, it sounds impressive, and I wish you luck, and thank you for coming on. That's Bellamy. Like I said, just a fun dude to talk to, good guy, and you should go check out all his things that he does. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you have any feedback you want to throw my way, go ahead and do that. homesteadsandhomeschools@gmail.com. Find me at Twitter at hsandhspod. And there's a link in the show notes to Discord. It may or may not work, but you can always contact me and I will get you a link to that little slice of the interwebs. There's lots of good information there, decent conversations, and just some guys that really know what they're doing and are willing to share what they know. And that's all we can do right now is build community wherever it may be. So definitely get in on that. I think that's all for this week. If you're buying stuff, homesteadsandhomeschools.com/Amazon, click through the link and I get a kickback for that, which is nice. You can leave a review on iTunes, or you can go check out Patreon, patreon.com/thelibertyhippie, and see what I got there for you. Some little bonus content here and there. There'll be a little bonus content today. Conversation with Bellamy carried on a bit more, so I threw that up there. And check it out. Check it out. That's all for now, folks. I thank you guys for sticking with me, for hanging with me, and being here through all these tumultuous times. And I hope you all have your same digits. I hope nobody lost anything this weekend. So, hey guys, that's all for now. Get out there, sow those seeds of liberty. We can all reap sheaves of freedom together.
I'm gonna ride a hustler's dream.